Eleanor Thorne had a 22-year marriage built on Success Trust and a $50 million fortune. She and her husband, Marcus, were the envy of their Greenwich, Connecticut circle, a power couple with a flawless life. But for 11 of those years, Marcus was a ghost living a complete parallel life with a second family in a city just 2 hours away. When Elena filed for divorce, Marcus expected a simple 50-50 split, perhaps 60-40 in his favor. He didn't know his wife wasn't just grieving, she was investigating, and the revenge she planned for the final asset mediation wasn't just about money. It was a cold, calculated annihilation that would leave everyone, especially his high-priced lawyers, utterly speechless. The Thorne estate in Greenwich wasn't just a house. It was a testament, a sprawling colonial revival of white-painted brick and slate roofing. It sat on 4 acres of meticulously manicured land that rolled down to a private sliver of the Long Island Sound. Eleanor Thorne had designed the interiors herself, a symphony of high-end minimalism, all cool blues creams and brushed brass. It was serene expensive, and for the past 3 years felt as hollow as a drum. Eleanor and Marcus Thorne had been married for 22 years. They met at Yale. She was studying art history. He was a famously ambitious MBA candidate. Marcus was a force of nature, charming, ruthless, and possessing an energy that pulled everyone into his orbit. Elena, quieter and more analytical, had been his anchor. Her family money had provided the seed capital for his first venture, a boutique private equity firm, Thorne Capital. Now it managed assets in the 9-figure range. On paper they were perfect. They were the Adlers of their social set, a nod to their best friends, Julian and Chloe Adler, who lived 2 estates over. They hosted the right galas, sat on the right charity boards, and their now adult twin daughters Olivia and Sophia were both excelling at their respective Ivy League schools. But a perfect life is often the best place to hide an imperfect truth. The hollowness had started subtly. Marcus, always a hard worker, began working smarter, which paradoxically meant he was away more often. "Expanding the Boston portfolio, Elena," he'd say, kissing her forehead. "It's a delicate merger. I need to be there in person." At first it was 1 night a week, then 2, then sometimes 3. He'd come back smelling of different soap and a faint, unidentifiable exhaustion that was different from his usual work fatigue. He was less present even when he was home. He'd stand in their magnificent museum-like kitchen, scrolling through a phone she didn't recognize. "New phone?" she asked once, her voice casual, as she inspected a cut crystal vase. "Just for the Boston clients?" he'd replied, not looking up. "International numbers. Easier to keep it separate." Elena, who had co-managed their finances for 2 decades, who prided herself on her attention to detail, chose to believe him. To question it felt like pulling a thread that might unravel the entire tapestry of their life. She was 48. Their daughters were grown. This was supposed to be their time, the golden years before true retirement. The alternative, the one that whispered in her ear at 3 a.m., was simply too catastrophic to entertain. She focused instead on his company. Marcus had always been the face, but Elena had been the spine. She sat on the board, and while she'd stepped back from daily operations, she still reviewed all major expenditures and quarterly reports. Lately, she'd felt a prickle of unease there too. A new LLC had appeared on the books, Apex Property Group. It was listed as a holding company for a new commercial acquisition in Boston's Seaport District, but the numbers felt off. The capital outflows to Apex were substantial, yet the incoming revenue from the property was anemic, barely covering the debt service. "It's a long-term play, darling. Marcus had said, waving his hand dismissively when she'd brought it up. "We're renovating 2 floors. Pre-lease agreements are still in negotiation. Don't worry your pretty head about it. It's handled." Don't worry your pretty head. The phrase, once a term of endearment, now landed like a small, sharp slap. Elena poured herself a glass of Sancerre, the wine cold against her hand. She stood at the massive bay window, overlooking the Sound. The water was grey and choppy, matching her mood. She wasn't worried about the money. They had more than enough. She was worried about the secrecy. Marcus had never shielded her from a deal before. He'd always valued her insight, her ability to see the structural flaws he in his bullish optimism often missed. This new behavior, the separate phone, the delicate Boston merger, the dismissiveness, it wasn't just a husband pulling away. It felt like a businessman hiding a bad bet. And so Elena Thorne did something she had never done in her 22-year marriage. She decided to investigate her husband. But her target wasn't a mistress. It was his balance sheet. She wasn't hiring a private detective to catch a cheater. She was hiring a forensic accountant to find a financial hole. She picked up her phone and dialed the number for a man she'd been researching for a week, a quiet, terrifyingly thorough investigator named Thomas Harrison. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice steady and cool. "My name is Eleanor Thorne. I believe my husband is being defrauded by his new business partners. I need you to find out who is really behind Apex Property Group." It was a lie, of course. She suspected Marcus was behind it. But it was the first step. And as she hung up the phone, the setting sun glinted off the brass hardware in her perfect kitchen, making it look for a moment like the bars of a beautiful gilded cage. Thomas Harrison was not the kind of man you found in the Yellow Pages. He was a former SEC investigator who now ran a one-man corporate risk assessment firm from a nondescript office in Stamford. He was expensive, discreet, and pathologically thorough. He didn't find smoke. He found the match, the accelerant, and the fingerprint on the empty gas can. Elena met him in a private room at the Greenwich Country Club. He was a man of medium height, medium build, dressed in a forgettable grey suit. He listened, his eyes unblinking, as Elena laid out her concerns. "Apex Property Group," she explained, pushing a file across the table. "It's a drain. The cash flow is all one way out. Marcus claims it's a renovation, but the outflows aren't going to contractors. They're going into a secondary holding company, Seaport Holdings, and from there, it's a black box." "You suspect your husband is being embezzled?" Harrison asked, his voice flat. "I suspect," Elena said, choosing her words with precision, "that the financials are being deliberately obscured. I want to know who is on the other end of those payments. Who is Seaport Holdings?" "Understood," Harrison said. He closed the file. "I'll start with the public filings for Apex. I'll trace the incorporation of Seaport. I'll need a retainer and your complete discretion. You cannot mention this to your husband. If he is being defrauded, you'll tip him off to warn his partners. If he is the one—" Harrison let the sentence hang. "I understand," Elena said, her stomach tightening. "Do whatever is necessary." For 2 weeks, Elena lived on a knife's edge. She played the part of the supportive, semi-detached wife. She hosted a dinner party for Julian and Chloe Adler, smiling as Chloe lamented the rising cost of equestrian care. She discussed summer plans with her daughters on FaceTime, agreeing that yes, the Hamptons house needed a new pool filter. All the while, Marcus continued his routine. He left for Boston on a Tuesday, came back on a Thursday. When he returned, he seemed happier, lighter. "The deal is finally coming together," he announced, kissing her cheek. He smelled of fresh air and a cologne she didn't recognize. "It's going to be huge, Elena. bigger than the Oro 8 acquisition. His good mood was almost more painful than his secrecy. It felt like a celebration she wasn't invited to. The first report from Harrison arrived in a blank encrypted email. It was dry, just data. Apex Property Group was, as Marcus said, the owner of a commercial building in Boston. Seaport Holdings, however, was a shell corporation. Its address was a UPS store in Cambridge. Its sole signatory was a name Elena didn't recognize, Sophie M. Walsh. "A ghost," Harrison said on their check-in call. "No social media, no professional footprint. The name doesn't cross-reference with any of your husband's known associates. She's a cutout. The money stops with her. The next step would be physical surveillance of the property of your husband during his Boston trips. It's a different protocol, Mrs. Thorne. It gets, personal." Elena's hand trembled. Sophie M. Walsh. The name felt like a stone in her gut. A cutout. A proxy. Or something else. "His next trip is this Tuesday," Elena said, her voice a whisper. "He lands at Logan at 10 a.m. He'll be there for 2 days. I want to know where he goes. I want to know who he meets. I want to know who Sophie Walsh is." "As you wish," Harrison replied, his tone unchanged. The following Tuesday, Elena watched Marcus pack. He folded his suits with care, whistling a tune from a jazz station. "Big meeting today?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe of their vast walk-in closet. "The biggest," he said, zipping his Toomey bag. "Finalizing the tenant agreements. If this lands, we'll be the talk of the town." He smiled, and for a second, he was the same man she'd fallen in love with. "Wish me luck." "Good luck, Marcus," she said, forcing a smile. The moment his car cleared the long gravel driveway, Elena's composure shattered. She sat on their perfectly made bed, the 800 thread count sheets suddenly feeling like sandpaper. The waiting was a physical torment. Harrison didn't call. He worked. On Thursday evening, an hour before Marcus was due home, the email arrived. The subject line was simply, "Update TH." It was not a financial report. It was a single password-protected PDF. Elena's fingers fumbled as she typed the code they had agreed upon. The document opened. It wasn't spreadsheets or bank records. It was a surveillance report complete with photographs. The first photo was of Marcus exiting a terminal at Logan Airport. The second was of him getting into a black Uber. The third was of the Uber parked not in Boston's financial district, but on a quiet tree-lined street in Brookline. The fourth photo was of Marcus, bag in hand, walking up to a charming brownstone. The fifth photo made the world stop. He was on the steps of the brownstone, and he was kissing a woman. Not a peck on the cheek. A deep, lingering kiss. A welcome home kiss. The woman was attractive with dark, curly hair, maybe in her late 30s. Elena scrolled down, her breath caught in her throat. The next photo was taken an hour later from a distance. It was Marcus, the woman, and a young boy, perhaps 9 or 10 years old, walking down the street. They were laughing. Marcus had his arm around the woman, and his other hand was on the boy's shoulder. They looked for all the world like a family. Harrison's text was clinical. Subject, Marcus Thorne. Arrived 10:15 a.m. Traveled to 142 Amory Street, Brookline. Property is a residential condominium. Primary associate female identified as Sophie M. Walsh. Age 39. Registered owner of the property, purchased 11 years ago. Minor male, identified as Leo Walsh. Age 10. Enrolled at the Park School. Marcus Thorne is listed on school emergency contact forms. Summary. Subject did not visit the Apex property building. he spent 48 hours at the Amory Street residence. Attached are financials. The property at 142 Amory Street was purchased via a trust linked to the Seaport Holdings LLC. School tuition for Leo Walsh has been paid for 5 years from the same account. Please advise on next steps. Elena stared at the screen. The room was spinning. The words blurred. 11 years. Age 10. Marcus Thorne is listed on school emergency contact forms. It wasn't a bad business deal. It wasn't an embezzlement partner. It was a second life. A second home. A second woman. It was a child. His child. The sound of gravel crunching in the driveway announced Marcus's return. Elena closed the laptop, her movements robotic. She stood up, walked into their enormous marble bathroom, and was violently, silently sick. She washed her face, rinsed her mouth, and looked at her reflection. The woman staring back was a stranger, a pale, hollow-eyed ghost. She heard him enter the house, his voice booming. "Elena, I'm home. You won't believe the day I had." She smoothed her hair, straightened her silk blouse, and walked out of the bathroom. The mask was back in place, but it was no longer made of glass. It was forged from ice. Grief was a hot, searing pain, but what she felt now was something else. It was cold. It was precise. It was the chilling, calculating calm of total, absolute rage. Marcus thought he was a master of the universe. He had just made the gravest mistake of his life. He hadn't just betrayed his wife. He had betrayed his business partner. And this partner was about to liquidate his entire world. For 1 month, Elena Thorne lived a life of staggering duplicity. She was the perfect wife, the perfect hostess, and in secret, the perfect executioner. She smiled at Marcus's jokes, feigned interest in his Boston deal, and even slept beside him in their sprawling, king-sized bed. Her body rigid with a disgust so profound it felt like a physical illness. Every Boston trip he took was now a fresh stab of betrayal. But it was also a window of opportunity. The moment his car left her war room assembled, she didn't just have Thomas Harrison anymore. She had Diana Vane. Diana was the most feared divorce attorney in New York, a woman known for eviscerating her word hubristic husbands. She was a shark in a $5,000 Armani suit, and when Elena laid out the file, the photos the LLC's. The 11 years of diverted funds. Diana's smile was thin and dangerous. "Oh, he didn't just cheat Mrs. Thorne," Diana said, tapping a red-lacquered nail on the photo of Marcus and Leo. "He stole. This is fraud. Commingling of marital assets. Fraudulent conveyance. This is a feast. He didn't just give you a reason for divorce. He gave you the weapon, the ammunition, and the target." "I don't just want a divorce, Diana," Elena said, her voice low. "I want to dismantle him. He used our money, the company I helped build, to fund a lie. He put our entire estate at risk with his recklessness. Then we don't file on grounds of infidelity." Diana said, her eyes gleaming. "That's messy and emotional. We file on financial malfeasance. We go after the company. We prove he used corporate assets for personal gain, voiding his share of the partnership agreement. We argue that Thorne Capital is in fact insolvent due to his liabilities, namely 11 years of child support and damages he owes this Sophie Walsh." Elena paused. "What about her, Sophie Walsh? Who is she? A willing participant?" "Unlikely," Diana mused. Men like Marcus don't build this kind of elaborate lie with a partner. They build it around them. He's likely told her a completely different story. She probably thinks you are the distant ex-wife or a business partner from a lavender marriage. She is as much a victim as you are. A new daring and terrifying idea began to form in Eleanor's mind. Find her, Diana. Not through Harrison. I want you to find her. I want to know her story. Does she have a lawyer? She will, Diana said. But you want to talk to her. I want to meet her, Elena said. If he's built a cage for her too, I want to hand her the key. It took Diana's team 3 days. Sophie Walsh was not a ghost. She was just private. She was a former art curator who had left her job at a Boston gallery 10 years ago, just after her son Leo was born. She lived a quiet, upper-middle-class life, funded entirely by the investment returns from a trust Marcus had set up for her, the trust Elena knew that was just a pipeline from Thorn Capital's operating account. Elena scheduled her own trip to Boston. She told Marcus she was visiting an old college roommate in Beacon Hill. He thought it was a wonderful idea. "Take my driver," he'd offered. "No," she'd said, "I'll take the train. I want the quiet time." The meeting was set at a neutral location, the private library of the Boston Athenaeum. Elena arrived first. The scent of old books and lemon oil polish a stark contrast to the acid in her stomach. Sophie Walsh entered at 2 p.m. sharp. She was softer than she looked in the surveillance photos, with kind, intelligent eyes that were etched with a deep, consuming anxiety. She clutched her handbag as if it were a life raft. She clearly had no idea why a high-powered New York lawyer had requested an urgent financial consultation. Elena stood up. "Ms. Walsh, thank you for coming. I am Eleanor Thorne." Sophie's face registered nothing. The name meant nothing to her. She smiled politely. "It's a pleasure to meet you. Your lawyer was very mysterious. How can I help you?" Elena didn't sit. She walked to the window overlooking the granary burying ground. "This is going to be difficult, Ms. Walsh, so I will be direct. We have a man in common." Sophie's polite smile faltered. I don't understand." "Marcus Thorne," Elena said. Sophie's confusion deepened. "Marcus? How do you know Marcus? I've known him for 25 years, Elena said, turning to face her. "I am his wife." The color drained from Sophie's face. She visibly swayed, grabbing the back of a leather chair. No, that's not possible. His wife, Elena, she died years ago. A car accident. He told me." The air left Elena's lungs. It wasn't a car accident. It was a character assassination. He hadn't just hidden her. He had killed her. "He lied," Elena said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "I am very much alive. We have been married for 22 years. We have 2 daughters. We live in Greenwich, Connecticut." Sophie sank into the chair, her hands covering her mouth. The sound she made was a strangled sob of pure, undiluted horror. No. We've been together for 12 years. He's Leo's father." "I know," Elena said. She sat opposite her. "I have the school enrollment forms. I have the wire transfers from my husband's company that pay your mortgage and Leo's tuition, the company we own together." Sophie looked up, her eyes wide with terror and dawning realization. "The trust. He said it was from his family's inheritance. He said his parents left it for him, But he couldn't touch the principal. Oh my God. He told me. He said we couldn't get married until his business was disentangled from his first wife's dead estate. That it was complicated. It is complicated, Elena agreed, but not in the way he told you. For the next hour, the two women, the wife and the mistress, the society queen, and the secret family, pieced together the staggering architecture of Marcus's deceit. He had used Elena's money and name to build his business, and he had used that business to fund a fantasy life with Sophie. He had 2 homes, 2 calendars, 2 lives running in perfect, monstrous parallel. Sophie's grief was raw and explosive. He's a monster, a sociopath. He read Leo bedtime stories last night. He helped him with his science project. How? Elena's grief, by contrast, had crystallized into something much harder. He's a narcissist, Sophie, and he's a thief. He stole your life, your chance at a real relationship, and he stole my money and my trust to do it. Sophie's tears began to subside, replaced by the same cold fire Elena felt. What do you want from me? You're going to sue him. You're going to expose him. We are, Elena said. Sophie blinked. Elena leaned forward. Marcus thinks he's fighting one scorned wife. He thinks he can buy me off with half of an estate he's already secretly drained. He's not prepared for 2 women. He's not prepared for you. You, Ms. Walsh, are not just his mistress. You are his single largest unsecured creditor. I don't have money for a lawyer like you, Sophie whispered. You don't need one, Elena said. My lawyer, Diana Vane, has already reviewed your case. Marcus has committed multiple counts of fraud against you. He has exposed you to incredible financial and legal risk. He has established a pattern of behavior. Diana is prepared to represent you pro bono in a separate suit. A separate suit? Yes, we are not friends, Ms. Walsh. We are allies. You will file a suit for palimony, fraudulent misrepresentation, and sole custody and child support for Leo. I will file for divorce on the grounds of financial malfeasance. Our suits will be filed on the same day. Our claims will be linked. Elena laid out the plan. It was brilliant. It was brutal. It was total. Sophie looked at Elena, truly seeing her for the first time, not as a rival, but as a fellow victim, and a terrifyingly competent one. He's not just going to lose his money, is he? Sophie said. Elena stood up and smoothed her skirt. Money is just a symptom, Sophie. We're going to take his company. We're going to take his reputation. We're going to take his name. By the time we are done, the only thing Marcus Thorne will have left is the Toomey bag he carries between our 2 houses. Sophie Walsh, the curator, the mother, the 12-year victim, stood up and nodded. Show me where to sign. The serving of the papers was a masterpiece of coordinated shock. On a Tuesday morning, Marcus Thorne was in his glass-walled corner office at Thorne Capital, closing what he believed was the deal of a lifetime. He had just secured a new line of credit against the company's assets he planned to leverage further for his Boston portfolio, which was in reality a new, much larger home he'd promised to buy for Sophie and Leo. At 10:00 a.m., a process server walked into the gleaming lobby of his Stamford office and served him with Elena's divorce petition. At 10:01 a.m., his high-powered corporate lawyer, Alan Jacoby, received a courtesy copy. At 10:05 a.m., a second process server walked into the same lobby and served Marcus Thorne with a second lawsuit. Sophie M. Walsh vs. Marcus A. Thorne, citing fraud, misrepresentation, and a petition for emergency custody and child support. Marcus's world collapsed in the span of 5 minutes. His first call naturally was to Eleanor. She was in her garden calmly pruning roses when the phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. He called again and again. His text messages, which she read with detached interest, were a perfect timeline of narcissistic rage. Eleanor. What is this call me? This is a mistake. 10:08 a.m. Pick up the phone. Your lawyer is insane. Financial malfeasance. 10:15 a.m. Who the hell is Sophie Walsh, and why is she suing me? 10:22 a.m. Eleanor. This is sabotage. You are destroying the company. Call me now. 10:30 a.m. Answer me. Answer me, you cold butch. 10:45 a.m. She finally picked up at noon, her voice as smooth as cream. Marcus, you seem upset. Upset, upset, you've ruined me, he screamed into the phone. Who is this woman? You've conspired with some lunatic to extort me. I'll have you both arrested. You know exactly who she is, Marcus, Elena said calmly. She's the mother of your 10-year-old son, Leo. She's the woman you've been living with in the Brookline condo I paid for. Ringing any bells? There was a dead, suffocating silence on the other end. He had, until that second, believed he could contain the damage. He believed he could lie his way out, that Sophie would never find out that Eleanor only knew about some financial issues. The realization that the two worlds had collided and allied struck him mute. You, he stammered. Yes, me, Elena said. Now I'm hanging up. My lawyer, Diana Vane, will be handling all further communication. Do not contact me again. Do not come to the Greenwich house. I've had the locks changed and the security code. Your things are with your lawyer. She hung up. The next few weeks were a flurry of legal activity. Marcus Reeling hired Alan Jacoby, a slick corporate brawler, to handle the divorce. He hired a separate bulldog-like family law attorney to handle the Sophie situation. His strategy was clear paint, Eleanor as a vindictive, scorned wife, and Sophie as a delusional, gold-digging mistress. It was a fatal miscalculation. Marcus's lawyers tried to bury them in paperwork. They filed motions to dismiss, motions to sever the two cases, motions to seal the proceedings. Diana Vane and Sophie's new lawyer, hand-picked and paid for by a litigation trust Elena had funded, met every motion with a precise, crushing counter-motion. They didn't just have accusations. They had receipts, 11 years of them. They had the wire transfers from Thorne Capital to Seaport Holdings. They had the mortgage statements for the Brookline condo signed by Marcus. They had the Park School enrollment forms listing Marcus Thorne, father. They had geotagged photos from Harrison, placing Marcus at school plays, father-son picnics, and weekend trips to Vermont with Sophie and Leo. They had credit card statements for a black Amex in Marcus's name, a card Elena never knew existed that paid for jewelry dinners at Boston's finest restaurants and a couple's vacation to Bermuda. Marcus's legal team, seeing the mountain of evidence, quickly shifted tactics. The bluster vanished, replaced by a sullen, desperate attempt to settle. This is getting ugly, Alan Jacoby said in a four-way call with Diana. My client is prepared to be generous. He will give Mrs. Thorne the Greenwich house free and clear. He'll offer her 50% of his liquid assets. As for Ms. Walsh, He is prepared to set up a reasonable child support trust. This all goes away. No public humiliation, no fuss. Diana Vane put the call on mute and laughed. "He thinks he's negotiating," she said to Elena, who was sitting in her office. She unmuted the call. "Alan, let me be clear. Your client is not in a position to offer anything. He is a man facing at least 2 civil fraud suits, and if we're feeling ambitious, a RACO complaint. 50%. We aren't asking for 50%, we are taking 100. That's absurd. The company is his. His name is on the door, and his mistress is on the payroll funded by fraudulent conveyances, which by my reading of the corporate charter, Mrs. Thorne helped write voids his partnership stake entirely. He has systematically devalued the marital estate to fund a secret life. We are not splitting the estate. We are reclaiming stolen property. The Greenwich house is already hers. The company is hers. The Hamptons house is hers. And my client, Jacoby sputtered. What does he get? He gets to keep his frequent flyer miles, Diana said. And he gets to negotiate with Ms. Walsh for visitation, which, given his pattern of deceit, we will be recommending be supervised. My client will see you at the mediation. Have a nice day. She hung up the click, echoing in the silent room. Elena felt a grim satisfaction, but the trap wasn't fully sprung. The mediation was the final piece. Marcus still believed he had leverage. He believed Elena was bluffing, that she wouldn't dare destroy the company she relied on for her own lifestyle. He's an arrogant fool, Elena told Diana. He thinks I'm like him. He thinks I'm motivated by greed. He doesn't understand that I would burn this entire company to the ground just to watch him choke on the ashes. We won't have to, Diana said, pulling a new file from her briefcase. Harrison found something else. The final nail. Elena looked at her. What? The new line of credit. The one he took out the day you served him. He leveraged all of Thorne Capital's remaining unencumbered assets. He did it without a board vote, which is a direct violation of the bylaws. Why? Elena asked. He was trying to move the money. He wired the entire $15 million loan to an offshore account in the Caymans. He was planning to drain the company and flee. Elena's blood ran cold. He would have left her with a bankrupt company and left Sophie and his son with nothing. He tried to transfer it, Diana said, but I anticipated it. The moment you filed, I put a temporary restraining order on all corporate accounts. The $15 million is frozen. The bank has flagged him for fraud. Alan Jacoby doesn't even know about this yet. Marcus didn't just commit civil fraud, Elena. He just committed a federal crime. The trap was no longer just a legal one. It was a criminal one. The mediation is in 2 days, Elena said. He's going to walk into that room thinking he can negotiate. He has no idea he's walking into his own execution. The social fallout was as immediate as it was brutal. Greenwich society feeds on scandal, but it abhors messes. The simultaneous lawsuits were a cannonball in a koi pond. Their best friends, Julian and Chloe Adler, were the first to react. Chloe, whose primary concern was social standing, called Eleanor in a breathless whisper. "Eleanor, darling, I'm hearing things, utterly dreadful things. That Marcus, that there's another woman, and you've locked him out." Elena was in her home gym midway through a punishing session on the Peloton. She muted the instructor. "Hello, Chloe. Yes, it's all true." "My God," Chloe gasped. "A common affair. How tawdry. Well, you're better off, of course. Julian and I are firmly on your side. We're having a small get-together on Friday. Just close friends. You must come." You can't let him see you hiding." Elena smiled, a cold, humorless expression. "Thank you, Chloe. That's very loyal of you." "Of course, darling. We're Team Elena. Always." 2 days later, Elena saw Julian Adler's car parked outside Alan Jacoby's law office. And that night at the supportive dinner party, Julian, after 2 martinis, put his hand on Elena's arm. "Elena," he said, his voice thick with false sincerity. "I've spoken to Marcus. He's a broken man, utterly destroyed. He made a terrible mistake, yes. But this legal war, it's going to destroy the company, our company." Elena's eyes sharpened. Julian wasn't just a friend. He was a significant minority investor in Thorn Capital. "What are you saying, Julian?" "I'm saying," he leaned in, "that you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You're the one who's going to end up with 50% of nothing. Jacoby says Marcus is willing to give you 60% of the liquid assets and the house if you drop this financial malfeasance claim and let him keep the company. It's a good deal, Elena. Take the win. Don't let your emotions and that barracuda lawyer of yours cloud your judgment." The betrayal was so blatant, so self-serving, it was almost comical. He wasn't Team Elena. He was Team Julian's investment. He was Marcus's little messenger, sent to pressure her into taking a deal that would save Marcus and Julian's portfolio from ruin. Elena slowly removed his hand from her arm. "Julian," she said, her voice dropping to a confidential whisper that made him lean in closer. "Thank you for your concern. It means so much." She smiled a brilliant, dazzling smile. "You tell Marcus his offer is intriguing. You tell him I'm tired of fighting. I'm exhausted. I just want this to be over. I'll consider it." Julian beamed, believing he had succeeded. "That's my girl. I knew you'd see reason." Elena watched him walk away, preening back to Chloe. She picked up her clutch, walked out of the Adler's house without saying goodbye, and got into her car. The mask was cracking. Not from grief, but from a profound, isolating contempt for the entire world she had inhabited. They were all vultures dressed in designer clothes. She drove not home, but to the Stamford offices of Diana Vane. It was 10 p.m. Diana was still there. "They're panicking," Elena said, throwing her Chanel bag onto a chair. "Marcus sent Julian Adler to me tonight. They're trying to get me to back down. They're offering 60%. Diana looked up from a mountain of paperwork. "He's desperate. The TRO on that $15 million loan is killing him. The bank is calling his loan, and he can't access the money he stole to pay it. He's trapped. He's trying to put our friendship against me," Elena spat. "He thinks I'm a weak, emotional woman who will just fold." "Then let's use that," Diana said, a slow smile spreading. "You considered his offer. Now you counter. You'll agree to the mediation. You'll agree to discuss a settlement. You'll seem reasonable. You will walk into that room tomorrow looking like the broken, tired wife who just wants out." "And then?" Elena asked. "And then," Diana said, gesturing to a stack of 3 thick bound documents on her desk, "we introduce evidence. We will let him and his shark, Mr. Jacoby, lay out their entire generous offer. We will let him lie on the record to the mediator. We will let him commit perjury." Diana tapped the first binder. "This is Exhibit A, the financials. Every fraudulent wire transfer, every hidden account, every cent he stole." She tapped the second. "Exhibit B, the second life. Every photo of Sophie and Leo, the school records, the vacation itineraries, proof of his 11-year lie." She then tapped the third, much slimmer, but somehow heavier binder. "And this," she said, "is Exhibit C, the criminal intent. This is the wire transfer request for $15 million to the Cayman Islands. This is the proof of the federal bank fraud. This is the one that sends him to prison." Diana smiled. "He thinks he's coming to a divorce mediation, Eleanor. He's actually coming to his own arraignment. He's just the only one in the room who won't know it." Elena looked at the three binders. The annihilation, the betrayal, and the execution. "Tomorrow," Elena said, "I want him to see me. But I also want him to see her." Diana raised an eyebrow. "Sophie, are you sure that's a high-risk play? It could be emotional." "It won't be," Eleanor said. "He needs to see in one room the two lives he thought he was so clever to keep apart. He needs to be confronted by the full scope of his destruction. I want Sophie Walsh sitting right next to me. I want him to look at his wife and his mistress, and I want him to know definitively that they are united, and that he has absolutely nowhere left to run." The conference room on the 40th floor of a downtown Stamford skyscraper was sterile, silent, and pressurized with unspoken animosity. A massive, polished mahogany table reflected the gray, overcast sky. Marcus Thorne and his lawyer, Alan Jacoby, were already seated. Marcus looked terrible. He was pale, his suit hung loosely on him, and his usual charismatic swagger was replaced by a sullen, twitchy energy. He was a man drowning in debt and facing a public relations nightmare. But he was still arrogant. He still believed he held the cards. He believed Elena was at her core a socialite who would fold to avoid a public, messy trial. He believed Julian Adler had talked sense into her. The plan was simple. Jacoby would offer the generous 60-40 split. Marcus would offer a mea culpa about his mistake, Sophie, and a reasonable trust for the child, Leo. They would strong-arm Elena, paint her lawyer as a greedy shark, and settle this before the frozen $15 million loan defaulted and the bank came for him. The door opened. Elena Thorne walked in. She was not the broken, tired wife. She was a vision of cold power. She wore a severe, dark navy sheath dress, her hair pulled back in a sleek chignon. She looked like a CEO arriving for a hostile takeover. With her was Diana Vane carrying a briefcase, and right behind her, walking with a straight-backed, nervous but resolute dignity, was Sophie Walsh. Marcus Thorne's jaw literally dropped. He half rose from his chair. What is she doing here? This is a private mediation." "She was invited," Diana Vane said, her voice clipping the air, "as a material witness to the financial dissipation of the marital estate. Please sit down, Marcus." Alan Jacoby, blindsided, recovered first. "This is highly irregular. Her claims are a separate matter. We are here to discuss the Thorne divorce." "And so we shall," said the mediator, a retired judge named Eileen Grant, who had been thoroughly pre-briefed by Diana. "Ms. Walsh is here as an observer for now. Mr. Jacoby, please begin." Jacoby shuffled his papers. He launched into his pre-rehearsed speech. "Judge Grant, Mrs. Thorne, we are all here to find an amicable solution. My client has made a profound personal error, one he deeply regrets." Marcus, on cue, looked at Elena with what he clearly thought was a look of pained remorse. "Elena, I am so sorry for the pain I caused. I was lost." Elena met his gaze. Her expression was utterly blank, as if she were looking at a stranger who had asked her for directions. She didn't say a word. Jacoby continued. "He wants to make this right. He is offering Mrs. Thorne the Greenwich estate unencumbered. He is offering her 60% of their liquid assets. In exchange, we ask that the financial malfeasance claims be dropped, the company be left in Mr. Thorne's sole control, and the other matter," he gestured vaguely at Sophie, "be handled with discretion." The mediator nodded. "A 60-40 split. Ms. Vane." Diana Vane smiled. "Thank you, Your Honor. My client rejects that offer. In fact, we find it insulting. Mr. Jacoby seems to be under the impression that we are here to split an estate. We are not. We are here to recover stolen assets." She stood and placed the first thick binder on the table. Exhibit A, the financials. This details years of fraudulent transfers from Thorne Capital, a marital asset, to a shell corporation, Seaport Holdings. The total sum with interest is $14.2 million. This money was used to purchase a $3 million condo in Brookline, pay for 11 years of living expenses, and fund a decade of tuition at the Park School. Jacoby paled. Those were investments, the Boston portfolio. "Oh," Diana said, opening the second binder. Exhibit B, the Boston portfolio. This is a photo of the portfolio. His name is Leo Walsh. He is 10 years old. She slid a photo across the table. It was Marcus, Sophie, and Leo at Leo's 10th birthday party, blowing out candles on a cake. Marcus was smiling, wearing a world's best dad party hat. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. "This is a disgrace. You will not drag my son into this." Sophie Walsh spoke for the first time, her voice shaking, but clear. "He is my son, and you dragged him into this when you lied to him for his entire life, when you told him his step-sisters were just Daddy's business partner's kids, when you told me his wife was dead." Jacoby's head snapped toward his client. "You told her what?" Marcus was sputtering, his face a blotchy red. "She's lying. She's a delusional gold digger." "Am I?" Sophie shot back. "Then what about the Bermuda trip, Marcus, the one you told Elena was a banking conference in Zurich, or the diamond necklace you bought me for our anniversary, the one you put on the corporate card as client entertainment?" "This is irrelevant," Jacoby shouted. "His personal life is not—" "It is relevant," Diana Vane cut in, "when he used marital assets to fund it. Which brings us to our demand. We are not asking for 60%. We are taking 90%. Mrs. Thorne will take the Greenwich house, the Hamptons house, and 100% of Thorne Capital." Jacoby burst out laughing, a desperate, hysterical laugh. "You can't be serious. You'll get 50% and you'll be lucky. If you push this, we'll drag this out for years. We'll countersue for defamation. You'll do nothing," Diana said, her voice dropping. She placed the third, slimmer binder on the table. "Because if you do not accept our offer in the next 10 minutes, I will pick up my phone and I will call the U.S. Attorney's Office. Exhibit C, criminal intent." She opened it. "This, Mr. Jacoby, is a copy of a wire transfer request for $15 million, signed by your client, routed to an account in the Cayman Islands. It was an attempt to fraudulently liquidate the company's primary asset, a loan he took out without a board vote to evade his creditors, namely my clients. This isn't just a messy divorce, gentlemen. This is bank fraud. This is racketeering. This is a 10 to 20-year prison sentence." The room went utterly silent. Alan Jacoby stared at the wire transfer request. He looked at Marcus. You idiot!" Marcus Thorne finally broke. The arrogance, the bluster, the charm, it all evaporated. He slumped in his chair, a hollowed-out man. He was trapped. He was in a word finished. What do you want?" he whispered, looking at Elena. Elena Thorne leaned forward for the first time, her eyes boring into his. "I want you to admit it. On the record. All of it." "Elena, please, say it. Say I stole the money. Say I lied to Sophie. Say I have a son named Leo. Say I tried to flee the country. He looked at his lawyer, who just stared blankly at the table, his own career flashing before his eyes. "Say it, Marcus," Elena commanded. And in a small, pathetic voice, Marcus Thorne, the titan of private equity, the master of the universe, confessed. "I stole the money. I lied. I have a son. I tried to move the funds." Elena leaned back, a small, cold sigh of satisfaction. "Good. Now you will sign. You will sign over 100% of your shares in Thorne Capital to me. You will sign over the houses. You will sign over your retirement accounts. In exchange, Mrs. Thorne and Ms. Walsh will agree not to press criminal charges." "I'll have nothing," Marcus whispered, tears of self-pity welling in his eyes. "You'll have your freedom," Diana Vane countered, "which is more than you deserve. And Ms. Walsh's suit. You will sign over the Brookline condo to her free and clear, and you will agree to the child support terms her lawyer has drafted, which will be funded by the personal accounts you thought you'd hidden." It wasn't a mediation. It was a surrender. Marcus cornered and broken signed every single document. He signed away his company, his homes, his money, and his past. The true revenge, Elena realized, wasn't just in taking his money. It was in the way she did it. She had used his own arrogance, his own lies, and his own greed as the weapons. She hadn't just divorced him. She had forensically, systematically, and legally erased him. The shockwave from that mediation room was immediate. Marcus Thorne was out. The company name was changed within a week. Thorne Capital became Apex Holdings, a quiet nod to the very lie that had started it all, now reclaimed by Eleanor. Julian and Chloe Adler, upon hearing that Marcus was not only broke but had been criminally compromised, distanced themselves so fast it was comical. Chloe sent Elena a 3-tiered flower arrangement with a card that read, "We always knew he was no good for you. We stand with you, darling." Eleanor had her assistant donate it to a nursing home. Marcus's ruin was total. He was a social and financial pariah. Stripped of his company and his homes, he was left with a leased Audi, a mountain of personal legal debt, and a reputation so toxic he couldn't get a meeting with a dog walker. He was last seen moving into a small, furnished apartment in White Plains, paid for by what was left of a trust fund from his parents. His relationship with Sophie and Leo was even more devastating. The court, based on his pattern of fraudulent deceit, granted Sophie's request. Marcus was allowed to see his son, but only on supervised visits at a state-approved facility. Leo, confused and hurt, refused to see him. The world's best dad had been exposed as a phantom. Elena's life, by contrast, was remade. She didn't burn the company down. She ran it. She stepped in as CEO of Apex Holdings, liquidating the toxic assets Marcus had acquired, stabilizing the portfolio, and reassuring her investors minus Julian Adler, whom she'd bought out at a humiliatingly low price. She found she was better at the job than Marcus had ever been. She was precise, she was strategic, and she was, for the first time in 22 years, completely and totally free. She sold the Greenwich estate. It held too many ghosts. She kept the Hamptons house, but she had it redecorated from top to bottom, erasing every trace of her old life. About a month after the mediation, She was in Boston, finalizing the transfer of the Brookline condo's title. She met Sophie Walsh at a small cafe to sign the final papers. The two women sat across from each other, an awkward but profound silence between them. They would never be friends. The chasm of their shared trauma was too wide. But they were two soldiers who had survived the same war. "The condo is in your name now," Elena said, sliding a folder across the table. "The trust for Leo is fully funded. You'll never have to worry about him." Sophie looked at the papers, her hands steady. Marcus. He tried to call Leo. From a blocked number. He told him that I was lying and that you were a witch who stole his money." Elena sighed. "Narcissists never believe they've lost. They just believe they've been wronged." "My son is in therapy," Sophie said, her voice tight. We're processing. But we will be okay. Because of you." She looked up, her eyes clear. "You didn't have to include me. You could have just taken him down yourself. You saved us." "He used my money to trap you, Sophie," Elena said. "That made you my responsibility, or at least my liability. We both deserve to be free of him." Sophie nodded. She stood up, and Eleanor stood with her. In a gesture that surprised them both, Sophie reached out and briefly squeezed Elena's arm. "I hope you find peace, Elena." "You too, Sophie," Elena replied. Elena watched her walk away, a mother heading home to her son, her life finally her own. Elena turned and walked the other way toward the train station. She was a CEO, a single woman, and the sole architect of her own future. The revenge wasn't just the asset split. The revenge was the truth. It was the fact that Marcus Thorne's whole life had been a house of cards, and Eleanor had simply calmly, with the help of another woman he'd underestimated, pulled the one card that made it all fall down. She didn't just shock everyone. She had shocked herself. She had found in the ruins of her perfect marriage a strength she never knew she possessed. And it was worth more than $20 million. In the end, Marcus Thorne's greatest mistake wasn't just the betrayal. It was underestimating the two women he betrayed. Elena's story is a chilling reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most dangerous one to cross. She didn't just walk away with her share. She reclaimed her life by exposing every last lie, piece by piece, and forming an alliance he never saw coming. What do you think of Elena's ultimate revenge? Was it pure, cold justice, or was it a step too far? And what about her alliance with Sophie? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories of complex drama and shocking real-life justice, make sure to like this video, share it with a friend who loves a good revenge story, and subscribe for more incredible stories every single week. Click that notification bell so you never miss an update.
What if I told you that a single Instagram post wearing someone else's wedding dress could destroy a $50 million empire? Sarah Martinez thought she'd lost everything when she found her husband's mistress flaunting her most precious memory to 2 million followers. But what Sarah didn't know was that the woman destroying her life wasn't even real. Behind the perfect smile and designer lifestyle was a professional con artist who had done this before to 6 other women. And somewhere in the shadows, a dead man was watching, planning, and preparing to bring down an entire criminal network. This is the story of how a broken teacher became the weapon that exposed the most twisted revenge plot you've ever heard. Trust me, you won't see the ending coming. If this story had you on the edge of your seat wondering what would happen next, imagine how Sarah felt living through it. Hit that like button if you believe karma always finds a way, and drop a comment telling me which twist shocked you the most. Rachel's true identity, Jake being alive, or something else entirely. Share this with someone who loves a good justice story. And don't forget to subscribe, because I've got more incredible true stories that will leave you questioning everything you think you know about the people around you. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to stay broken. Sarah Martinez stood frozen in the frozen food aisle of Walmart, her phone trembling in her hands. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she stared at the Instagram post that shattered what remained of her world. There was Madison Wells, 26 years old with 2 million followers, wearing Sarah's wedding dress, the same ivory silk gown Sarah had saved for 8 months to buy, working double shifts at 3 different jobs while putting her husband through business school. The caption read, "When he loves you, he gives you everything. Diamond life, blessed wife, #blessed life." Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed against the frozen peas, her Walmart vest crinkling as tears streamed down her face. Other shoppers stepped around her, pretending not to notice the 32-year-old woman having a breakdown next to the ice cream. Her phone buzzed with notifications. Friend after friend was tagging her in the post, asking if she was okay, sending shocked face emojis. Sarah turned off her phone and sat there on the cold linoleum floor, wondering how her life had become someone else's social media victory lap. 8 years ago, Sarah had been Richard Thompson's high school sweetheart. She was the girl who worked at Denny's until 2 in the morning, then came home to help him code his food delivery app. She was the one who believed in him when investors laughed at his pitch, who maxed out credit cards to keep them afloat, who celebrated with gas station champagne when he landed his first real client. Now Richard was worth $50 million, and Sarah was wearing a polyester vest that smelled like industrial detergent. The app had exploded 3 years ago. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of Richard Thompson, the self-made tech genius who revolutionized food delivery. The interviews started, then the speaking engagements, then the move to the mansion in the hills. Sarah had been so proud, so sure they were finally living their dream. She should have noticed when Richard started working late every night, should have questioned why he needed a social media manager with 2 million Instagram followers, should have realized that Madison Wells wasn't hired for her marketing expertise. But Sarah had been busy trying to keep up with their new life, learning how to host dinner parties for investors, how to smile for cameras at charity galas, how to pretend she belonged in rooms full of people who spent more on wine than she used to make in a month. The affair had been going on for 6 months before Sarah found out. She discovered it the worst possible way, walking into their bedroom to find Madison live streaming from their bed, telling her followers about her amazing new relationship with an incredible entrepreneur. Sarah had filed for divorce the next day. Now, 3 months later, she was about to lose everything in court. Richard's lawyers had painted her as a gold digger who contributed nothing to his success. They conveniently forgot about the years she supported them both, the sacrifices she made, the dreams they built together. Sarah pulled herself up from the floor and finished her shopping. Ramen noodles, generic peanut butter, day-old bread. The cashier, a teenager with purple hair, gave her a sympathetic look. "Rough day," Sarah managed a weak smile. "Something like that." As she walked to her car, Sarah's phone rang. Tyler Chen, her public defender, sounded exhausted. "Sarah, I need to prepare you for tomorrow. Richard's team filed additional motions. They're claiming the company was built entirely after your separation, which isn't true, but they have documentation that makes it look convincing." Sarah sat in her car, staring at the Walmart parking lot. "What does that mean?" "It means they're trying to prove you're entitled to nothing. Not the house, not the savings, not even spousal support." "Tyler, I worked 3 jobs to put him through school. I was there for every late night, every failure, every breakthrough. How can they say I contributed nothing? Because the law doesn't always recognize emotional labor or financial sacrifice if it's not documented properly. Rich people know how to protect their assets. We're fighting an uphill battle." Sarah closed her eyes. Tomorrow was the final hearing. In less than 24 hours, a judge would decide whether she walked away with enough to rebuild her life or left with nothing but the clothes on her back. She thought about Madison wearing her wedding dress, probably planning to post more photos, maybe from the courthouse steps after Sarah lost everything. Sarah started her car and drove home to her tiny apartment, the one she could barely afford on her teacher's salary. She had lesson plans to grade and a life to somehow rebuild. But first she had to survive tomorrow. She had no idea that tomorrow would change everything in ways she couldn't imagine. The courthouse smelled like old wood and broken dreams. Sarah sat at the defendant's table in her only good dress, a navy blue number she'd bought for job interviews years ago. Tyler shuffled through papers beside her. His cheap suit wrinkled from too many cases and too little sleep. Across the aisle, Richard looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine. His lawyers surrounded him like an expensive armor, their briefcases probably worth more than Sarah's annual salary. Judge Patricia Brooks entered, a no-nonsense black woman in her 50s who had a reputation for cutting through legal nonsense. Sarah felt a flicker of hope. Maybe someone would finally see through Richard's performance. "Your Honor," Richard's lead attorney began, "my client built his empire through innovation and hard work. Ms. Martinez was merely a supportive spouse who contributed no intellectual property, no business acumen, and no financial investment to the company's success." Tyler stood up. "Your Honor, Ms. Martinez worked multiple jobs to support them both while Mr. Thompson developed his business. She made significant financial and personal sacrifices that enabled his success." The judge looked at the evidence. Bank records showing Sarah's paychecks going toward their living expenses, documentation of Richard's student loans that Sarah helped pay, photos of them together at early business meetings. But Richard's team had come prepared. "Your Honor, we present evidence that Mr. Thompson's breakthrough came after the couple's relationship had deteriorated. The key innovations, the investor relationships, the growth strategies, all developed independently of any influence from Ms. Martinez. They had emails, carefully selected and presented out of context. They had witness statements from business associates who barely knew Sarah. They had financial records that made it look like Richard's success happened in isolation. Sarah watched her life being rewritten in real time. 8 years of partnership, sacrifice, and shared dreams reduced to legal footnotes and dismissed as irrelevant. Then Madison walked in. She wore Sarah's wedding dress like it was casual Friday attire, the silk flowing behind her as she took a seat in the gallery. Photographers' cameras flashed. Sarah realized this was all part of the show, content for Madison's social media empire. The cruelty was breathtaking. Madison could have worn anything, but she chose the dress that represented Sarah's happiest day, the symbol of promises that were now being legally annulled. "Your Honor," Richard's lawyer continued, "Mr. Thompson is willing to offer Ms. Martinez $50,000 as a goodwill gesture, despite having no legal obligation to do so." $50,000 for 8 years of her life. Tyler fought valiantly, but they were outgunned. Richard's legal team had prepared for months, crafting a narrative that painted Sarah as a peripheral figure in her own marriage. Judge Brooks reviewed the evidence for what felt like hours. Finally, she spoke. "While I find the circumstances of this case troubling, the law requires me to consider documented contributions to marital assets. Based on the evidence presented, I award 95% of all marital assets to Mr. Thompson, with 5% to Ms. Martinez." Sarah felt the world tilt. 5% of their shared life. "However," Judge Brooks continued, her voice sharp, "I want to note for the record that this court finds the timeline of certain relationships and business decisions highly suspect. Instagram followers don't pay alimony." "Honey," Madison's face flushed red, but she kept her social media smile intact. Tyler grabbed Sarah's arm as she swayed. The math was devastating. After legal fees and debts, she would walk away with $847. Richard stood up, already reaching for his phone to call his publicist. Madison was probably planning her celebration post. The photographers captured Sarah's stunned expression for tomorrow's gossip blogs. As the courtroom cleared, Sarah sat alone at the defendant's table. 8 years reduced to $800. Tyler patted her shoulder awkwardly. "I'm sorry, Sarah. We can appeal, but it'll take months and cost money you don't have." Sarah nodded numbly. Outside, she could hear Madison laughing with reporters, probably scheduling interviews about her inspiring love story. Sarah walked out of the courthouse with nothing but her purse and the clothes on her back. The apartment was in Richard's name. The car was in Richard's name. Even her teaching job was at a private school where Richard served on the board. She sat on the courthouse steps and checked her bank account on her phone. $847.33. Behind her, Madison was already posting to Instagram, wearing the wedding dress on the courthouse steps. Justice served. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it always wins. #blessed, #justice, #new beginnings. Sarah turned off her phone and walked away, not knowing that this was just the beginning of her nightmare. 2 weeks after the trial, Sarah's world had shrunk to the size of her Honda Civic. She'd been evicted from her apartment when the landlord discovered she couldn't pay next month's rent. Her teaching position was restructured after Richard made a generous donation to the school's new technology wing. She'd found temporary work at 3 different places: morning shifts at a coffee shop, afternoon cleaning at an office building, and evening inventory at a pharmacy. 18 hours a day on her feet, sleeping in her car between shifts, showering at the gym until her membership ran out. Her only companion was Bruno, a 3-legged German shepherd she'd rescued years ago. He sat patiently in the passenger seat as she parked behind the 24-hour laundromat, the only place with reliable Wi-Fi and bathrooms. Madison's Instagram had become a daily torture chamber Sarah couldn't stop watching. Every day brought new posts from Sarah's former life. Madison cooking in Sarah's kitchen, swimming in Sarah's pool, hosting parties with Sarah's friends who had quickly switched allegiances. Living my best life in my dream home, Madison had posted that morning, lounging on the couch Sarah had picked out for their first apartment. When you know your worth, the universe provides. Hashtag manifestation, hashtag blessed wife. The comments were even worse. Thousands of followers praising Madison's inspiring journey and her goals. A few people defended Sarah, but they were quickly drowned out by Madison's army of devoted fans. Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Found something? Meet me at Denny's on 5th Street. Come alone. Sarah looked at Bruno, who tilted his head sympathetically. What do you think? Boy, could this day get any worse? She found Tyler in a corner booth, surrounded by coffee cups and legal documents. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Sarah, I've been digging into Richard's financial records. Something doesn't add up. He spread papers across the table. Look at these dates. The company's biggest growth spurt happened right after someone named Jake Morrison disappeared. Sarah's blood went cold. Jake Morrison was Richard's best friend and business partner. He died in a boating accident 5 years ago. That's what I thought, but look at this. Tyler showed her incorporation documents. Jake owned 50% of the company when he died. His shares should have gone to his estate, but they somehow ended up with Richard. Sarah studied the papers. Jake's signature looked off, different from earlier documents. You think Richard forged documents to steal Jake's half of the company? I think Jake Morrison might not be as dead as everyone believes. And if he's alive, he owns half of everything Richard claims is his. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a spark of hope. If Jake was alive and could prove Richard stole his shares, it would change everything. How do we find him? Tyler pulled out his laptop. I've been looking into the boating accident. No body was ever found. The Coast Guard called off the search after 3 days. But here's the interesting part. Jake's phone pinged a cell tower in Mexico 2 days after he supposedly drowned. Sarah's heart raced. So he's alive. Maybe, or maybe someone found his phone. But there's more. Tyler showed her bank records. Large cash withdrawals from Jake's accounts in the weeks before his disappearance. Almost like he was planning to disappear. But why would he fake his death? Maybe he found out Richard was planning to betray him. Maybe he was in danger. Maybe he was gathering evidence. Sarah's phone buzzed with another Instagram notification. Madison had posted a video from Richard's office, showing off the vision board where she planned their future together. The same office where Jake used to work, his desk now replaced with Madison's ring light and camera equipment. We need to find Jake, Sarah said. It's the only way to prove Richard is a fraud. Tyler nodded. I've got a lead, a private investigator in Mexico who might have information. But Sarah, this is dangerous. If Richard really did try to kill Jake once, he's already destroyed my life. What else can he take? As if the universe wanted to answer that question. Sarah's phone rang, an unknown number. Ms. Martinez, this is Dr. Williams from Valley Animal Hospital. Your dog has been in an accident. Sarah's world stopped. What happened? He was hit by a car outside the laundromat where you've been staying. Someone brought him in. He's alive, but he needs emergency surgery immediately. The cost will be $8,000. Sarah looked at her bank balance. $233. I'll be right there, she whispered, already running toward her car. Tyler called after her. Sarah, wait. We can figure this out. But Sarah was already gone, speeding toward the one thing she had left to lose. The animal hospital smelled like disinfectant in desperation. Sarah paced the waiting room, her work uniform still damp with sweat from her coffee shop shift. Bruno was in surgery, and she was $8,000 away from saving the only family she had left. Dr. Williams emerged from the operating room, exhaustion etched on her face. The surgery was successful, but he'll need extensive rehabilitation. The bill includes surgery, medications, and a month of recovery care. Sarah stared at the invoice. $8,473. She had $233 to her name. I don't have the money, Sarah whispered, but please, he's all I have left. I'll work extra shifts. I'll pay it off monthly. I'll do anything. Dr. Williams softened. I'm sorry, but our policy requires payment before discharge. There are low-cost clinics that might help, but they have waiting lists. Sarah felt her world collapsing. She couldn't even afford to save her dog. Then a miracle happened. The receptionist approached with a confused expression. Ms. Martinez, someone just called and paid your entire bill. They want to remain anonymous, but Bruno's all taken care of. Sarah's legs nearly gave out. What who? They wouldn't say, just that they heard about your situation and wanted to help. People can be so kind sometimes. For the first time in months, Sarah cried tears of joy instead of despair. Someone had seen her pain and decided to help. Maybe there was still goodness in the world. 2 days later, Sarah received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typed message. Richard didn't build his empire alone. Check the Lake Tahoe incident. 2019. Someone who knows the truth. Sarah's hands shook as she read it again. Lake Tahoe. 2019. That was where Jake Morrison supposedly died. She called Tyler immediately. I got another clue. Someone's helping us. They met at the library, where Tyler had been researching Lake Tahoe news from 2019. Look at this police report. Jake's boat was found with signs of struggle, blood on the deck, but no body. The anonymous note said to check the Lake Tahoe incident specifically. What if Jake survived whatever happened and has been gathering evidence? Tyler pulled up more documents. There's something else. Large insurance payouts to the company after Jake's death. Life insurance that benefited the business, plus key person insurance. Richard collected over $10 million when Jake was declared dead. So Richard had a financial motive to kill Jake, or to make it look like Jake was dead while keeping him prisoner. Either way, someone knows the truth and they're trying to help us prove it. Sarah felt hope growing. Someone was on her side, someone with resources and information. That night, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Check your bank account. Sarah logged in and gasped. Someone had deposited $50,000 into her account. The next message read, use this to fight back. Richard stole everything from you, but the truth is coming. Trust no one else. Sarah stared at the money. $50,000 was enough to hire real lawyers, enough to launch a proper investigation, enough to fight back, but something felt wrong. She called Tyler. Someone deposited $50,000 in my account. The same person who paid Bruno's vet bill? Sarah, this is incredible. We can finally fight Richard with real resources. But Sarah's instincts were screaming warnings. Tyler, who has access to this kind of money? Who would know about my exact situation? Who benefits from me going after Richard? There was silence on the other end of the line. You think it's a trap? I think someone's playing a game, and I'm not sure if I'm the player or the piece being moved. Sarah's phone buzzed with another message. Madison isn't who she pretends to be. Watch tomorrow's live stream carefully. The truth will reveal itself. Sarah sat in her car outside the animal hospital, staring at the messages. $50,000 in her account. Anonymous tips about Richard's crimes. Promises of truth and justice. It felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. But what choice did she have? She was broke, homeless, and powerless. If someone wanted to use her to take down Richard, maybe that was better than having no chance at all. She typed back, "Who are you?" The response came immediately. Someone who's been watching, someone who knows Richard's secrets, someone who's going to help you get everything you deserve. Sarah turned off her phone and drove back to the laundromat. Tomorrow, Madison was doing another live stream. Whatever was about to happen, Sarah had a feeling her nightmare was just beginning, but at least now she wasn't facing it alone. Or was she? Madison's live stream was scheduled for 3 o'clock, and Sarah found herself parked outside her former house, watching through the living room window as Madison set up her ring lights and camera equipment. 200,000 viewers were waiting for Madison's special announcement. The comments were already flooding in with heart emojis and fire symbols, her devoted followers ready to worship whatever content she was about to serve. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her mysterious benefactor. Watch carefully. Madison's about to expose herself. The live stream began with Madison's usual routine. Perfect makeup, designer outfit, and that practiced smile that had fooled millions of people. "Hey, beautiful souls," Madison purred into the camera. "Today I have something special to share. A story about justice, karma, and what happens when people try to take what isn't theirs." Sarah's stomach dropped. This was about her. Madison held up a tablet showing news articles about the divorce trial. "Some of you have been asking about Richard's ex-wife, the woman who tried to steal half of everything he built. Well, I have tea to spill." The comments exploded. Sarah watched in horror as Madison began dismantling her character piece by piece. This woman spent years pretending to support Richard while secretly resenting his success. She never believed in him, never contributed anything meaningful, and when he finally achieved his dreams, she tried to take credit. Madison showed carefully edited text messages between Richard and Sarah, conversations taken out of context to make Sarah look manipulative and greedy. "But the universe has a way of protecting good people," Madison continued, "and sometimes karma needs a little help." Sarah's blood went cold. The way Madison said karma needs a little help sent chills down her spine. "You see, beautiful souls, I've been watching this woman for months, watching her struggle, watching her fail, watching her realize that actions have consequences." The livestream comments were vicious now. Thousands of people calling Sarah a gold digger, a parasite. Worse, Madison's followers had transformed into a digital mob, ready to destroy someone they'd never met. But then Madison made a mistake. "I even helped speed up her little reality check," Madison said with a cruel smile. "Sometimes the universe needs assistance delivering justice." Tyler, who had been watching from his office, immediately called Sarah. "Did you hear that she just admitted to interfering with your life?" Sarah's phone buzzed with another message from her mysterious benefactor. "Keep watching. She's about to confess everything." Madison was riding high on her audience's approval, getting more reckless with each passing minute. "You want to know how pathetic she is? I paid to have her dog hit by a car, then swooped in to save it like some kind of angel. She actually cried with gratitude." Sarah's world exploded. The live stream comments started shifting. Even Madison's most devoted followers were shocked by the casual admission of animal abuse. "Wait, what?" Madison read the comments, realizing her mistake. No, I didn't mean I was speaking metaphorically about karma." But it was too late. Screen recordings were already spreading across social media. Madison had confessed to deliberately hurting an innocent animal, and the internet was turning against her. Sarah's phone rang. Tyler was shouting, "Sarah, she confessed to a felony on live stream. We have her." But Sarah wasn't thinking about legal victories. She was thinking about Bruno, lying in surgery, fighting for his life because of Madison's sociopathic entertainment. The live stream was spiraling out of control. Madison was trying to backtrack, but thousands of viewers were already leaving angry comments, threatening to unfollow, calling her evil. "This is all being taken out of context," Madison insisted, but her perfect facade was cracking. "I would never actually hurt an animal. I love animals. I donate to animal charities." Sarah's mysterious benefactor sent another message. "Now you see who Madison really is. But this is just the beginning." Richard's secrets run much deeper. The live stream ended abruptly as Madison realized the damage was spreading. Within an hour, hashtags like Madison Wells Animal Abuser and Cancel Madison Wells were trending on multiple platforms. News outlets picked up the story. Animal rights organizations condemned her. Sponsors started dropping her endorsement deals. Sarah sat in her car, watching her former house through the window. Inside, she could see Madison pacing frantically, probably trying to do damage control with her publicist. Tyler called again. "Sarah, this changes everything. We can press charges for animal cruelty, and her confession gives us leverage in your case. The public is on your side now. But Sarah felt hollow. Bruno was alive, but traumatized. Madison's mask had slipped, but Richard was still protected by his wealth and lawyers. Her phone buzzed one more time. This was just the preview. Tomorrow, the real show begins. Trust me, Sarah. I've been planning this for 5 years. 5 years, that was when Jake Morrison disappeared. Sarah's mysterious benefactor wasn't some random good Samaritan. Someone had been watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. And somehow, Sarah had become the weapon they were using to destroy Richard's empire. She just wasn't sure if she was ready for whatever came next. The animal rights protests outside Madison's house started at dawn. Sarah watched from her car as dozens of activists gathered with signs reading, "Justice for Bruno," and "Madison Wells is a monster." Madison's perfect Instagram life was crumbling in real time. Local news vans lined the street. Sarah's phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, but she ignored them all. She had bigger concerns than Madison's public relations nightmare. Tyler had spent the night researching Jake Morrison's disappearance, and he called Sarah with urgent news. "I found him," Tyler said, his voice shaking with excitement. "Jake Morrison is alive, and he's been hiding in plain sight." Sarah nearly dropped her phone. "What do you mean?" "Remember that private investigator in Mexico I mentioned? I finally tracked him down. His name is Jake Morrison. He's been living under a false identity, gathering evidence against Richard for 5 years. Sarah's mind raced. "So Jake is my mysterious benefactor." It gets better. Jake has been building a case against Richard that goes way beyond stealing company shares. Money laundering, tax evasion, fraud, even attempted murder. Richard's entire empire is built on crimes. Sarah felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. If Jake had evidence to destroy Richard, why wait 5 years? Why involve her at all? Tyler, if Jake can prove Richard tried to kill him, why doesn't he just go to the police? Because Richard has connections everywhere. Local police, federal agents, judges. Jake needed to build an airtight case that couldn't be dismissed or buried. Sarah's phone buzzed with a new message. "Meet me tonight, Pier 37, midnight. Come alone. It's time you learned the whole truth." Sarah showed Tyler the message. "This has to be Jake." "Sarah, this could be dangerous. If Richard really tried to kill Jake once, he won't hesitate to tie up loose ends." But Sarah was tired of being helpless. For months, she'd been a victim of other people's games. Maybe it was time to take control. That evening, Sarah drove to the pier. The fog rolled in from the bay, making the world feel ghostly and uncertain. She parked near the water and waited. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, lean, with the kind of weathered face that comes from years of looking over your shoulder. "Sarah Martinez," he said. "I'm Jake Morrison, and I'm here to help you destroy Richard Thompson." Up close, Jake looked older than his 35 years. His eyes held the weariness of someone who had seen too much. "You've been helping me all along," Sarah said. "The money, the tips, even saving Bruno." Jake nodded. "I've been watching Richard's victims for years. You're not the first person he's destroyed, but you might be the last. Why didn't you just expose him yourself?" Jake pulled out a thick folder. "Because I needed Richard to feel secure enough to make mistakes. For 5 years, I've been documented every crime, every cover-up, every victim. But I needed someone on the inside, someone with a legitimate grievance." Sarah flipped through the folder. Bank records, emails, photographs, audio recordings. Years of evidence that painted Richard as a monster. "Madison isn't just Richard's mistress," Jake continued. "She's his partner in crime. They've been running money laundering operations through her social media empire, hiding millions in offshore accounts." Sarah found photos of Madison meeting with suspicious characters, documents showing payments to shell companies, evidence of tax evasion on a massive scale. "But here's the part that will interest you most," Jake said, pulling out a separate file. "Richard's been planning to eliminate you permanently." Sarah's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" Jake showed her intercepted text messages between Richard and Madison. Plans to frame Sarah for embezzlement, to have her arrested and imprisoned, to make sure she could never threaten their empire. The dog incident was just the beginning. They were going to escalate until you either killed yourself or disappeared completely. Sarah felt sick. She'd thought Madison was just cruel, but this was calculated psychopathy. Why are you telling me this now? Because tomorrow, Richard is going to try to have you arrested for corporate espionage. Those encrypted files you found on his laptop, he planted them there, then reported them stolen. You're walking into a trap. Sarah's world tilted. How do you know? Because I've been intercepting their communications for months. Richard thinks he's destroyed you, but you're about to become his worst nightmare. Jake handed her a small device. This contains enough evidence to bring down Richard's entire operation, financial crimes, tax evasion, murder conspiracy, and proof that he stole my half of the company. What do you want me to do? Tomorrow morning, when Richard's lawyers show up to arrest you, you're going to hand this to the FBI agents who will be waiting for them. Sarah stared at the device. Years of evidence, enough to destroy the man who had ruined her life. Jake, why didn't you just do this yourself? Jake's expression darkened. Because Richard Thompson destroyed more than just my business. He killed my sister. Sarah's heart stopped. Madison is your sister. Was my sister. The Madison Wells you know is a creation, a persona Richard built after he murdered the real Madison. My sister died 5 years ago, the same night Richard tried to kill me. The fog seemed to close in around them as Jake's words sank in. The woman living in your house, sleeping in your bed, wearing your dress, that's not Madison Wells. That's Richard's psychotic accomplice, wearing my dead sister's identity like a costume. Sarah felt the world spinning out of control. Everything she thought she knew was a lie. Who is she really? Her name is Rachel Santos. She's a con artist Richard hired to help him steal my company. When my sister discovered their plan, Rachel killed her and took her place. Sarah stared at the evidence in her hands. Tomorrow, we destroy them both. Jake nodded. Tomorrow, we get justice for everyone Richard Thompson has destroyed. As Sarah drove home, she realized she wasn't just fighting for her divorce settlement anymore. She was fighting for justice, for truth, and for a dead woman whose identity had been stolen along with her life. Tomorrow would change everything. Sarah barely slept. She sat in her car behind the laundromat, clutching Jake's evidence and watching the sunrise paint the sky red. Today, Richard Thompson's empire would crumble. At 8 a.m., Tyler called with panic in his voice. Sarah, don't go home. Richard's lawyers are at your apartment with arrest warrants. They're claiming you stole corporate secrets. I know, Sarah said calmly. It's all part of the plan. What plan, Sarah? They have federal agents with them. This isn't a game. Sarah drove toward the courthouse, where Jake had arranged for FBI agent Rebecca Torres to meet them. Agent Torres specialized in financial crimes and had been building a case against Richard for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. When Sarah arrived, she found Tyler pacing nervously outside the courthouse steps. Agent Torres stood nearby, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen enough corruption to fuel a lifetime of cynicism. Ms. Martinez, Agent Torres said, I understand you have information relevant to our investigation into Richard Thompson's financial activities. Sarah handed over Jake's evidence. This should be everything you need. Agent Torres reviewed the files quickly, her expression growing darker with each page. This is extensive. Where did you get this? From someone who's been watching Richard for a very long time. At exactly 9 a.m., Richard's legal team arrived with 2 federal agents in tow. Richard stepped out of his Tesla, looking confident and perfectly groomed, ready to watch Sarah's final humiliation. Agent Torres, Richard called out with his politician smile. I trust you're here to arrest Ms. Martinez for corporate espionage. I have evidence that she stole proprietary information from my company. Agent Torres approached Richard with a calm expression. Mr. Thompson, you're under arrest for money laundering, tax evasion, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. Richard's face went white. What? This is ridiculous. I'm a legitimate businessman. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. The assembled media erupted. Photographers captured every moment as Richard Thompson, tech genius and self-made millionaire, was handcuffed on the courthouse steps. Richard's lawyers protested, but Agent Torres had federal warrants backed by years of evidence. We'll also be seizing all assets pending investigation, including the house, the company, and all financial accounts. Sarah watched with satisfaction as Richard's empire began to collapse in real time. But the show wasn't over. Agent Torres turned to the federal agents who had come to arrest Sarah. Agent Johnson, you'll want to see this evidence before proceeding with any arrests against Miss Martinez. As the agents reviewed Jake's files, their expressions changed from confusion to understanding. They quietly withdrew their arrest warrant and melted back into the crowd. Richard was loaded into a federal vehicle, still protesting his innocence. His lawyers followed, already making calls to damage control specialists and bail bondsmen. But the real surprise was yet to come. At 10 a.m., a second wave of federal agents arrived at Sarah's former house. Through her phone, Sarah could watch live news coverage as they led Madison Wells away in handcuffs. The woman Sarah had thought was Madison showed no emotion as she was arrested. No tears, no protests, just cold calculation. Agent Torres received a call and turned to Sarah. Ms. Martinez, we found something interesting in the house. Miss Wells, or rather Miss Santos, had an entire room dedicated to surveillance equipment. She's been recording Richard's activities for months, probably building her own insurance policy. Sarah felt a chill. So she was playing Richard too. Professional con artists always have an exit strategy. She was probably planning to blackmail him eventually. Tyler grabbed Sarah's arm. This means your marriage was never real. If Richard was laundering money during your entire relationship, all those assets were obtained through criminal activity. Agent Torres nodded. Ms. Martinez, you'll be entitled to compensation as a victim of Mr. Thompson's criminal enterprise. We'll be working with you to determine the full extent of your losses. As the news trucks pulled away and the crowds dispersed, Sarah found herself standing alone on the courthouse steps where her life had been destroyed just weeks earlier. Her phone buzzed with a message from Jake. Phase 1 complete. Meet me tonight. There's something else you need to know. Sarah looked at the message and felt a mix of gratitude and unease. Jake had delivered everything he promised, but something in his tone suggested this wasn't over. She had gotten justice, but at what cost, and what other secrets was Jake keeping? The sun was setting as Sarah drove toward another mysterious meeting, wondering if she was finally free or just entering a new kind of trap. Behind her, Richard Thompson sat in a federal holding cell, and the woman pretending to be Madison Wells was being processed for identity theft, fraud, and accessory to murder. But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that the most dangerous player in this game was still out there, waiting to reveal their final move. Jake chose a different location this time, an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Sarah arrived to find him standing in the shadows, but he wasn't alone. A woman stepped forward, and Sarah's breath caught. She looked exactly like Madison Wells, but softer somehow, less predatory. Sarah, Jake said quietly, I'd like you to meet my sister, the real Madison Wells. Sarah's mind reeled. But you said she was dead. You said Richard killed her. The real Madison smiled sadly. That was the story we needed Richard to believe. Jake and I faked my death 5 years ago when we discovered Richard's plan to steal the company and eliminate us both. Sarah sank onto a nearby crate, overwhelmed. So you've both been alive this whole time? Jake nodded. Madison discovered that Richard was laundering money through the business and planning to frame me for the crimes. When she confronted him, he tried to kill her too. We realized our only chance was to disappear and gather evidence. But who is the woman who's been living my life? Madison's expression darkened. Rachel Santos. She's a professional con artist Richard hired to replace me. He thought he was using her, but she's been running her own game the entire time. What kind of game? Jake pulled out another file. Rachel has been systematically destroying Richard's relationships and business partnerships, isolating him so she could take control of everything. You weren't her first victim. Sarah, she's done this to at least 6 other women over the past 3 years. Sarah studied the file. Photos of other women, all formerly married to wealthy men, all destroyed in divorce proceedings where Rachel had played the role of the other woman. She's a professional homewrecker. More than that, Madison said. She studies her targets for months, learns their weaknesses, then systematically destroys their lives for profit. The money she makes from the divorces funds her lifestyle between cons. Sarah felt sick. So my entire marriage was just another job to her. Not your marriage, Jake corrected. Your marriage was real until Richard started his criminal enterprise. Rachel came later, when Richard needed someone to help him cover his tracks. Madison sat beside Sarah. I know this doesn't ease the pain, but Richard did love you once. Before the money corrupted him, before he got involved with dangerous people, he was a different person. What dangerous people? Jake's expression grew grim. The money laundering wasn't Richard's idea. He got involved with a criminal organization that needed legitimate businesses to clean their cash. Once you're in, you can't get out. So Richard was being blackmailed. In a way, but he also got greedy. The criminal money made him rich faster than his legitimate business ever could. He chose profit over everything else, including you. Sarah absorbed this information. Her husband hadn't just betrayed her. He'd sold his soul to criminals and dragged her down with him. Why are you telling me this now? Richard's arrested. Rachel's exposed. Isn't it over? Madison and Jake exchanged glances. Sarah, the people Richard was working with don't just disappear when their front man gets arrested. They need a new scapegoat, and you're the obvious choice. Sarah's blood went cold. What do you mean? Rachel was documenting everything, but not to blackmail Richard. She was building a case to frame you for the money laundering. In her version of events, you're the criminal mastermind who manipulated your innocent husband into illegal activities. Jake showed her more evidence. Bank records that had been doctored to show Sarah making suspicious transactions, emails that had been fabricated to make her look guilty, a complete false narrative that painted her as the real criminal. But the FBI has your evidence now. They know the truth. They have evidence against Richard and Rachel, but the criminal organization has been planning evidence against you for months. When Richard goes to trial, their lawyers will argue that you were the real mastermind. Sarah felt trapped again. So what do we do? Madison smiled grimly. We finish what we started. Tomorrow morning, we're going to expose the entire criminal network. How Jake pulled out a final device. Rachel kept detailed records of all her cons, including the names and locations of every criminal she's worked with. When the FBI raids their operations tomorrow, it will dismantle the entire network. But won't that put us all in danger? We've been in danger for 5 years, Madison said. It's time to end this once and for all. Sarah looked at the evidence, at the brave siblings who had sacrificed everything to seek justice, at the chance to finally close this chapter of her life. What do you need me to do? Jake's smile was fierce. Tomorrow morning, you're going to walk into Richard's company headquarters and hand-deliver this evidence to Agent Torres. The media will be there, the employees will be there, and Rachel's criminal contacts will be watching. You want me to be bait. We want you to be the hero who brings down an entire criminal empire. Sarah thought about Bruno, recovering from injuries Rachel had caused for entertainment. She thought about the other women Rachel had destroyed. She thought about Jake and Madison, who had lost 5 years of their lives seeking justice. Okay, Sarah said, let's finish this. As they made their final plans, Sarah realized she was no longer the helpless victim she'd been in that Walmart parking lot. She was about to become the weapon that destroyed the people who had tried to erase her. Tomorrow, the whole world would know the truth. Sarah stood in the lobby of Thompson Technologies, wearing the same navy dress she'd worn to her divorce trial. But everything else was different. This time, she held the power. The building buzzed with confusion. Employees whispered about Richard's arrest, about FBI raids, about the company's uncertain future. Sarah walked past familiar faces, people who had attended her dinner parties, who had smiled at her during charity events, who had quietly distanced themselves when her marriage fell apart. Agent Torres waited by the elevators with a full FBI tactical team. The media had gathered outside, tipped off about the morning's operation. Ms. Martinez, Agent Torres said. Are you ready for this? Sarah nodded. In her purse was the final piece of evidence Jake and Madison had provided, the complete record of Rachel's criminal network. But first, Sarah had a personal stop to make. She rode the elevator to the executive floor, where Richard's corner office overlooked the city he had once dreamed of conquering. The same office where she used to bring him lunch during their early days, where they had celebrated their first $1 million in revenue, where their marriage had slowly died under the weight of his ambition. Rachel sat behind Richard's desk, No longer pretending to be the innocent Madison Wells, her true personality showed through now, cold, calculating, predatory. Well, Rachel said without looking up from her computer. If it isn't the pathetic ex-wife, come to gloat about Richard's arrest. I came to give you a chance, Sarah said quietly. Rachel laughed. A chance, honey. I've been 10 steps ahead of you since day one. While you were crying in your car, I was building a case that makes you the mastermind behind everything. I know about your other victims. Jennifer Walsh in Seattle, Patricia Reyes in Denver, Amanda Chen in Phoenix. 6 women whose lives you destroyed for money. Rachel's expression flickered, but she recovered quickly. Prove it. Sarah placed a tablet on the desk, showing Rachel's own surveillance recordings. You documented everything, every crime, every victim, every transaction. You thought you were building insurance against Richard, but you were actually creating evidence of your own guilt. Rachel's composure cracked. Those files are encrypted, password protected. By your sister's birthday, the real Madison Wells told us everything. For the first time, Rachel looked genuinely shocked. Madison is dead. I watched her die. You watched her fake her death. She's been helping the FBI build a case against you for 5 years. Rachel stood up, her mask finally falling away completely. You stupid little teacher. You have no idea what you're dealing with. The people I work for don't leave loose ends. You mean the criminal network you've been documenting? They're being arrested as we speak. Through the office windows, Sarah could see FBI tactical vehicles surrounding buildings across the city. The coordinated raids had begun. Rachel grabbed her phone, frantically trying to make calls, but every number went to voicemail. Her criminal contacts were either arrested or running. It's over, Rachel, Sarah said. You can cooperate with the FBI and maybe get a reduced sentence, or you can go down with everyone else. Rachel's eyes filled with rage. You think you've won. You think this is justice. I made you stronger. Before me, you were just another naive housewife. I turned you into a survivor. You're right, Sarah said. You did make me stronger. Strong enough to destroy you. Agent Torres and her team entered the office. Rachel Santos, you're under arrest for identity theft, fraud, conspiracy, and accessory to murder. As the agents read Rachel her rights, she turned to Sarah one last time. This isn't over. People like us, we always find a way back. People like you, Sarah corrected. I'm nothing like you. Sarah left the building as Rachel was led away in handcuffs. Outside, the media was in chaos. News of the coordinated raids was breaking on every channel. The criminal network was collapsing in real time. Tyler found Sarah on the courthouse steps, the same place where her life had been destroyed months earlier. It's over, he said. Richards agreed to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. Rachel's facing life in prison. The criminal organization is finished. Sarah nodded, feeling strangely empty. She had gotten justice, but at what cost? 8 years of her life wasted. Her faith in love shattered. Her innocence lost forever. What happens now? Tyler asked. Now I rebuild, Sarah said. On my own terms this time. As she walked away from the courthouse, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Jake. Thank you for helping us get justice for Madison. The company's board wants to offer you a position as CEO while they restructure. Interested? Sarah looked at the message and smiled for the first time in months. Thompson Technologies had been built on her sacrifices as much as Richard's vision. Maybe it was time to claim what was rightfully hers. She typed back, "Let's talk." The sun was setting as Sarah drove toward her new life, leaving the courthouse and all its painful memories behind. She was no longer Richard Thompson's ex-wife or Rachel Santos's victim. She was Sarah Martinez, survivor, and she had a company to rebuild. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the lobby of Martinez Technologies, watching workers install the new company sign. The same building where Richard had built his empire, where Rachel had orchestrated her destruction, where Sarah had finally claimed her power. The transformation had been remarkable. Under Sarah's leadership, the company had pivoted away from Richard's shady partnerships toward legitimate ventures in education technology. They were developing apps to help underprivileged students access learning resources, exactly the kind of work Sarah had dreamed of doing as a teacher. Bruno lay at her feet, fully recovered from his injuries and serving as the company's unofficial therapy dog. Several employees had commented that his presence made the workplace feel more human, more real. Miss Martinez. Her assistant knocked on the office door. "Your 3 o'clock is here." Sarah looked up to see Jake and Madison walking into her office. The real Madison had finally reclaimed her identity, though she'd decided to keep a low profile while testifying in the ongoing criminal trials. "How are the trials going?" Sarah asked. "Richard got 15 years, Jake reported. "He cooperated fully, so it could have been worse. Rachel got life without parole. The judge said her pattern of destroying innocent people's lives warranted the maximum sentence." Madison sat down across from Sarah's desk. "There's something else. The FBI found evidence that Rachel was planning to kill you after the divorce trial. You getting that anonymous help wasn't just about justice. Sarah, we probably saved your life." Sarah absorbed this quietly. She'd suspected Rachel's plans were escalating, but knowing how close she'd come to death was still sobering. "What about the other victims?" Sarah asked. "We've been in touch with all of them," Jake said. "Some want to file civil suits, others just want to move on. But they all wanted us to thank you for bringing Rachel down." Sarah nodded. She'd started a support group for Rachel's victims, women who had lost everything to a predator's calculated cruelty. Healing was slow, but they were helping each other rebuild. Tyler knocked on the door, carrying legal documents. "Sarah, the final settlement papers came through. You're officially entitled to $30 million in compensation from Richard's criminal assets." $30 million. More money than Sarah had ever dreamed of having, but it felt hollow somehow. Compensation for trauma that could never be fully repaid. "Tyler, I want to set up a foundation," Sarah said, "for women going through difficult divorces, especially those facing wealthy opponents with expensive lawyers. The Sarah Martinez Foundation for Legal Justice?" Tyler suggested. "No," Sarah said quietly. "Call it the Madison Wells Foundation. For the real Madison, and for all the women whose identities were stolen by people like Rachel." Madison's eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Your name was used to destroy lives. Now it should be used to rebuild them." As the afternoon meetings concluded and the office emptied, Sarah found herself alone with her thoughts. She walked to the window overlooking the city, the same view Richard had enjoyed during his rise to power. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Saw the news about the company. Proud of you. A friend." Sarah smiled. She never had learned the identity of everyone who had helped her during those dark months. Some mysteries were better left unsolved. A year ago, she'd been crying in a Walmart parking lot, broken and hopeless. Today, she was the CEO of a technology company, helping other women find justice, turning her trauma into purpose. The healing wasn't complete. Some nights, she still woke up angry, still felt the sting of betrayal, still wondered if she'd ever trust anyone completely again. But she was building something meaningful from the wreckage of her old life. Bruno stretched and walked over to the window, pressing his nose against the glass. Despite everything he'd endured, he still trusted, still loved, still found joy in simple moments. "You're right, boy," Sarah said, scratching behind his ears. "We made it through." Her phone rang. A woman's voice, shaky and desperate. "Ms. Martinez, I saw the news about your foundation. My husband is trying to destroy me in our divorce, and I don't know where to turn." Sarah sat down at her desk and opened a new case file. "Tell me everything," she said. "We're going to help you fight back." As the sun set over the city, Sarah Martinez began her next case, helping another woman reclaim her power and rebuild her life. The dress that had once symbolized her humiliation now hung in her closet, a reminder of how far she'd come. Sometimes the best revenge was simply refusing to stay broken. Sarah had learned that justice wasn't just about punishing the guilty. It was about helping the innocent find their strength, their voice, and their power to write their own endings. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars, full of possibility and new beginnings. The story was far from over. It was just beginning. The Ruffin on. Word count 9487.